This is Dateline News and Conversation. Today is Friday. It's the 9th of January, 2026. It's been 6 days since Donald Trump had Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela captured and flown to the United States to stand charges on drug trafficking. I'm not sure where that indictment is right now, and we're not going to speculate on that. But what's happened in the last 6 days has caused the thousands of bloggers and alt media to speculate on what happened. Was it a setup? Was this just a fantastic, spectacular United States Delta Force raid and extraction of a democratically elected president in a sovereign country? Who knows? But in the last 6 days, Trump has again threatened Denmark and to take Greenland. He's also cautioned the president of Colombia to watch his ass, quote unquote. And once again, he's threatened Iran. And then just yesterday, I think it was yesterday, maybe the day before, the United States Coast Guard seized a Russian-flagged tanker in the North Atlantic. The provocations are pretty clear, not only to Russia, but to China, to India, to anybody else who says no to Donald Trump. And so I'm going to start with today. People have been saying for the last week, but really months now, when is Russia going to do something? Well, just last night, Russia sent the Oreshnik hypersonic missile from Astrakhan in Russia to Lvov in Ukraine. It's 1,800 kilometers. It traveled that distance in 10 to 15 minutes at 10,000 kilometers an hour, and it exploded with a ferocity that really hasn't been seen. It's the second time that Russia has used the Oreshnik to send a message to the United States, to Europe, and NATO. So today, we're going to hear from a Russian. He's an expert. He's an associate professor of political science and a researcher at the Financial University in Moscow. This is his fields of research: international relations, foreign policy of Russia, Europe, the militarization of Europe, political extremism, and migration. My guest today is Professor Alexander Kamkin in Moscow. Alexander, welcome to the show.
Regis, hi. Thank you for the invitation.
Well, this is the first time you've been a guest on the show. We met late last year at a Friends of Crimea meeting at a banquet in Moscow, and we've finally been able to connect after a number of attempts. But I'm so happy to have you on the show because we're going to hear from a Russian now and an expert. My colleagues, who are almost all in the United States, are interviewing each other. Rarely do they have the Russian perspective of what's going on. So I'm really happy to have you today at this really very important time. I'd like your comments to begin with. Was there a message that Russia sent today with the Oreshnik strike on Europe's largest gas storage facility in Lvov. Was that a message, Alexander?
Sorry. Well, I presume it is a kind of message because now the winter has come. For example, the temperatures in Germany, in Poland are under 0 Celsius, and if Europe will have no supplies of gas from Lvov deposits, it will mean that many Europeans will be in the conditions comparable with the conditions in contemporary so-called Ukraine, and it will worsen the political situation in European countries because the people in Europe they are too lazy and they prefer a comfortable life despite the economic decline in European Union. If you have a look at figures showing the decline of industry in Germany, in France, in Italy, it will be obvious that it is a crisis comparable with, I would say, 1940s, shortly after World War II, because it is not a recession, it is just a falling down in terms of the most important branches of industry. Actually, it is also a target of United States. There are many rumors, there are many visions. What is happening with Donald Trump? Is it a mistake of the system or it is a new system? Um, Everything has a deep interrelation. Kidnapping of Maduro on the one hand, kidnapping of Russian tanker close to Iceland. Sorry, it is a note. A Coast Guard of United States. The model of helicopter which landed special forces soldiers to the Russian vessel shows it was the same Delta Force which kidnapped Nicolas Maduro from Caracas. It was an obvious sign to Russia from Marco Rubio, who has now changed his uh, verbal attacks against Russia in the last days. It was a clear sign of United States, or better to say, by Trump administration to Russia that United States is still a hegemon, still a Regis superstate, which it had been under Clinton, Obama, Biden, etc. So, regarding Oreshnik strikes against Lvov, actually, I was wondering why Lvov? Why didn't we hit on Bankowy Street in Kiev? Why is Mr. Zelensky still alive? Why the Ukrainian parliament is still working? Why the bridges on the Dnieper River are still operating and military cargoes, grenades, rockets, missiles are still delivered through Germany, Poland, West Ukraine to the front line? There are too many whys. For sure, I'm not a decision maker in terms of military or some other issues. But by the way, it is the fourth year of special military operations, and all the key figures of the Ukrainian terrorist state, like Bogdanov, like Zelensky, like Yermak, or any others, they are still operating. Uh, Probably Russia has no facilities to make termination of key decision makers in Kiev, but Ukraine did. They assassinated several Russian high-rank officers with help of illegal migrants from Central Asia because the executors of both assassin attacks against Russian generals were people from Tajikistan and Uzbekistan. So, coming back to strikes on Lvov and kidnapping of Maduro, it is an obvious sign that the West, both European Union and American administration, they are directly involved into military operations against Russia. The targets may be some different. Europe has its policy of values and Europe is preparing for a military confrontation with Russia, which is going to start by 2030 or 2035 if they will, because now, for example, Germany is being militarized very, very fast. There are many startups for drones, water drones, air drones, which are opened by a German business because all industrial companies of Germany they have forced to support Ukraine. Otherwise, they will be just closed. And it is a kind of dictatorship within the European Union, and this dictatorship is very similar to the Nazi regime in which started in 1933. Everyone who has voice against this fascization or militarization is claimed as agent of Russia, anti-European, etc. Regarding Trump ideas to capture Venezuela, to capture Greenland, etc., it's a obvious Monroe Doctrine 2.0, I would say, because now Trump is preparing a new age of American hegemony because the previous model of globalization it failed, but a false understanding of Trumpism is very crucial here because many people also in Russia they are thinking that this kind of isolation of United States, is their concentration of Western Hemisphere, will bring some better relations between Russia and the United States. I fully disagree with that. I am sure that the people behind Trump, because Trump is only a showman in this term. Yes, he's a brilliant businessman. His political style is a style of businessman, but he is just an open part of this political iceberg. Such people like Peter Thiel, who are preparing of the coming of Antichrist and Armageddon clearly, because in his interview, Peter Thiel said openly that he is waiting for Antichrist to come. And these kind of religious wars is showing us that American administration is very deeply involved into the war plans um against against the entire humankind, I would say. And the plans of Trump, or better to say, the plans of people behind Trump, to take control over world deposits of rare metals, of oil and gas, they show that the American administration is planning to establish a kind of neo-empire because the plans to enhance artificial intelligence, cryptocurrencies, etc., they require gigawatts of energy, and the current energy industry in the United States is requiring trillions investments into the update of data centers and the cryptocurrency of mines. And the control over the oil, gas, and rare metals will provide Trump or the people behind Trump the possibility to play with prices like they did in the early 1980s before the collapse of Soviet Union. And it is a preparation of a global war, which may start after 2030. I presume it can be 2020, 35, 36, because all new technologies of drone wars, they are now being developed and tested in the Ukraine. Ukraine is actually a test yard for all significant military players to test new tactics, new machines, new vessels in the new generation of the wars. But it is only a kind of first round in the boxing. It is just a preparation, just a kind of uh, um, small kind of war which will be growing in coming years because the Oreshniks missiles, the Kinzhal, the other hypersonic, their real targets are not Ukrainian gas tanks in Lvov or some heating power stations in Kharkiv. The real targets are NATO headquarters in Brussels, the marine facilities in Rostock in Germany, in Rotterdam, in London. This is a real target for these facilities. But now we have to use this very, I would say, cheap, very sophisticated weapons for minor targets because now Ukraine is number one in this queue of aggressors against Russia.
Um, you touched on a lot of very important things, Alexander, and I want to go a little bit deeper on some of these. You mentioned Trumpism, and you mentioned that it's not really Trump, it's those people that are behind him. You can call it whatever you want, the deep state, um, you know, global financial power centers. It doesn't matter what you call it. That it's not Trump. He's the mouthpiece for it. He's very brazen. He's very rude, and he's just firing from the hip so often. But it really has had an effect to, number one, terrify most of the people on the planet. I think the people in the United States are either so indoctrinated, brain dead, or in denial that many are thinking, "Oh, this is great. It's going to decrease our taxes. It's going to reduce the price of everything." But on the contrary, from what I hear, all hell is breaking loose in the United States, not only economically, politically, but culturally. So one has to wonder how successful this Trump administration has been, how successful the attempt to restore the United States to the global hegemon, to get full spectrum dominance, total domination of the entire planet. I question how successful that's going to be, but I want to go a little bit deeper on a couple of other things that you've said. I have, as many people around the world and in Russia, have wondered why is Zelensky and his associates still in power when they have assassinated several Russian top generals and diplomats. Daria Dugina, for example, they were going after her father, but they eliminated her. And I know I've been to the Donbass on 2 occasions in 2019, and they've assassinated many of the political leaders and many of the leaders in the initial resistance, going back to the beginning of the conflict. And so, people are wondering, couldn't Russia have finished this thing much quicker? Why is it going so slow? My answer to that, and I believe that Russia, in the person of Vladimir Putin, who's the face of the administration, is doing everything it can to avoid escalating this conflict so that it gets out of control and that it goes nuclear. That's been my big fear. I think a lot of other people would agree with that today. People in the United States as well, who are more sympathetic to Russia, are really afraid that this thing could spiral out of control. Now, when we talk about spiraling out of control, Alexander, what Trump just did on January 3rd in Venezuela, you mentioned, was a message to not just Russia, a message to China, India, any other country that gets in its way. I want to ask you this point blank. Do you think that the situation in the world today, because of what's happened in the last 6 days, is more critical than it's ever been.
Yes, for sure. Because this escalation in South America with Venezuela, it is not only a message, it is also a step in the chess play, which global players are doing. It was a significant step by American administration to increase its position, to make them better in the global competition, with the global okay, let's call the things as they are in the global war against the competitors like Russia, China, and some others. And it was not only a sign, it was also a very important plan to push out China from Venezuela. Russia is out of play now because first, Russia is too far, and we have no possibilities to make some control in Venezuela. It is like Syria, 2024. When the Islamists they made their advance very fast, and it was an absolutely surprise for Bashar Assad and also Russian militaries in the country. And now it is another hit, very well prepared. It was a masterpiece of American Special Forces. And the next one will be probably in Iran, because this color revolution now, this
Okay, let me interrupt you. I want to come to Iran, but in a minute. I first want to ask you, you've been talking about this was the message to Russia. Russia not in a position to go to war in the Western Hemisphere, the Caribbean. Uh, Basically, its hands were tied. But what about China? I want your thoughts now on what the Chinese might be thinking, because I don't know what percentage of their gas and oil comes from Venezuela, but it's a great percentage. Um, and Russia has been investing heavily in the development of that country's infrastructure. Uh, what 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 do you think Chinese are thinking? What do you think Xi Jinping is thinking as he watches this unfold over the last 6 days? Your thoughts on that?
Well, China is not about to start a real confrontation with the United States in Venezuela, but it was clear for Chinese leaders that all negotiations, that all attempts to find some kind of contract or agreement or peace deal, it's just for nothing. That's why I presume that China will accelerate its preparation for military solution of Taiwan issue and the preparation for a confrontation against the United States in Pacific region. Now China is building dozens of military vessels. The speed of increase of Chinese fleet is just amazing, and Chinese military doctrine is now they openly says that the confrontation with the United States is a greatest threat to China in the coming decade, and I presume that China will for sure support its economic interests, but it is a very good lesson for all countries, Russia, China, some others. If you have some investments offshore, Venezuela, Syria, some Africa, and etc. Please be prepared to protect your investments by force. It's a 19th century age of colonialism when various countries had colonial wars. France, Great Britain, or the World War One, which was openly a war for colonies in Africa and Eastern Asia. And now we are facing a world order because Yalta-Potsdam system after World War II is now completely destroyed. a new military and economic and political order will now established. And the problem is that the United States are establishing in it much faster for their benefit. Yes, it is openly that now the Trump administration is a kind of Roger superpower, like Noam Chomsky called it in the late 1990s after bombing of Yugoslavia, 1999, and other countries they have to adopt and just to make their political planning in terms of these new realities. Some people in Kremlin just hope that spirit of encourage is still alive, and it is the greatest mistake of Russian diplomacy and planning, political planning, because but the encourage it was a very sophisticated trap by Trump to show Russia some kind of vision of negotiations, of agreements, but in reality, the task of Trump and Trumpists is to have Russia as its probably not a colony, but a proxy state in future war against China. The problem of Russia is that still there are several parties close to Vladimir Putin which have different visions of the future. Some are thinking, okay, let's make an alliance with China against the West. Other people say, no, we're still a West-oriented country. Probably for us, it is better to be in the alliance with Trump. The most furious point of view I've heard from some Telegram channel, some kind of pessimistic view. The people say, okay, Russia is almost a colony, and we need to select whose colony we are going to be: a colony of China, a colony of Turkey with its neo-Osmanism, or a colony of Trump. And they say, okay, let's be a colony of Trump. It's not so terrific as another one. So for European countries, they view Russia as a future colony. Trump administration is viewing Russia as a kind of proxy state. And in this situation, in this term, we have to continue the special military operation and survive in terms of global confrontation.
Yeah, you made a really good point at the end. I have felt this way. Well, I've been here now, coming here since 2016, and I came here to find out the truth about what happened in Odessa in 2014, what happened with Crimea returning to Russia in 2014. I've returned on two other occasions in 2018 and 2019, and now I've been living here for 6 years in Yalta, as most of the people who watch my show know. I have been saying all of this time that what is going on is not really a war in Ukraine or for any parts of Ukraine. It's been a war of survival for Russia against the onslaught of the hegemon. I've wanted to believe that President Putin understands that. I think he had hoped for renewed relationships with the United States. I hope this week has been a wake-up call for that. I want to ask you directly again for a very simple, short answer. Do you think now that Trump's peace plan and all these back and forth negotiations between Witkoff and Kushner and members of Putin's circle, do you think that's over? Do you think that do you think Putin has finally figured out there isn't going to be any peace plan? Trump is not going to be involved anymore in trying to be a moderator or a facilitator. What are your thoughts on the future of U.S.-Russia relationships, not 10 years from now, right now?
Well, I hope very much that Putin will understand that there is no peace talk possibility now because Trump policy in this term is just forcing to peace talks by um, violating all the principles of international law and sovereignty. Uh, it is a kind of world gangster who forces you to pay him every month some percent of your incomes, like it was in Russia in the early 90s, when criminal groups controlled the entire policy and economy of the country. And for sure, there is no chance to have some results of such kind of peace talks in future because for Trump, he has already decided his targets and his basics in this so-called peace talks. For Russia, it's crucially necessary to take control over so-called Ukraine. Why I am calling it so-called? Because actually, historically, geopolitically, and culturally, Ukraine is a part of Russia. Ukrainians are the same Russians who have believed for over 100 years that they are some different. For us, it is crucially necessary to have this reunification with other part of Russian nation, which is living now in the so-called Ukraine. For Europe, it is very necessary to have control over Ukrainian agriculture deposits and etc. Just remember, First and Second World Wars, the most important target for Germany was the Ukraine because the entire agriculture. If you remember the history, the German empire in the World War One was absolutely without agricultural resources, without food. They used these ersatz products, or in the World War Two, and the control over Ukraine was a guarantee for Germany and the European Union in form of Third Reich and other to survive. So for Americans, it is a different story because they want, or better to say, Trump and his people, they want a global hegemony and the global governance. And Ukraine is too small for them in terms of global planning, but it is also important. Don't forget that Zelensky has sold Ukraine twice. First to British with this treaty for 100 years, and second time to Trump, the control over rare elements, etc., etc. So Americans have obvious economic interests. Europe has obvious economic and geopolitical interests. But for Russia, it is a case of survival.
Let me follow up on that. Um, Vladimir Putin has said on so many occasions that we are all Slavs, we are all brothers. I think, I think, as an American living here, uh, watching this unfold, obviously very pro-Russian. Uh, I think that Putin, as the face of the Russian country, nation, has gone so slow, so has tried to preserve as much of Ukrainian infrastructure as possible and lives, citizens' lives. And I want to ask you this question. It's my opinion, and it's been my opinion, as I've gone over the three major goals of the special military operation, the demilitarization, denazification, and the complete neutrality of Ukraine. And then that little sticky clause of resolving the core fundamental issues that led to this, which was the advancement and encirclement of Russia by NATO. When I look at those, I don't see how Putin can compromise on any of that if it's going to survive. And my thinking has been that Russia, for a period of time, is going to have to absorb all of Ukraine. Maybe the west of it goes to Poland. I don't know. But in order to really fully achieve the denazification, that's a long-term re-education project. But to help rebuild Ukraine, I see that responsibility is going to fall on Russia. What are your thoughts about Russia's plans for the future of Ukraine?
Well, I don't know plans of Vladimir Putin or some planners in the president administration, but my view is for sure we need to uh, demilitarize and to take the control over Ukrainian territory. Yes, you're absolutely right. There are some parts of Ukraine in the west of this country which historically belong and culturally belong to Poland or to Hungary. And it's not about Lvov or Ternopil or other territories which historically were for hundreds of years under control of Habsburgs, of Poland, etc. But the territory for like Kiev, Dnipropetrovsk, Sumy, Kharkov, they should be Russian again in terms of cultural unity, in terms of language unity, etc. But sure, the process of bringing Ukrainians to a normal way of singing, it will last for decades. It's a very complicated, sophisticated process, but it is a must. Otherwise, we will have these people with a negative identity, which identity is just we are ready to starve, we are ready to die in order not to be Russians. It's crazy. It's a kind of schizophrenia in a cultural or in political sense, and this process should be stopped. And that is probably the main important target of a special military operation. It is not about the control of soil or land plots or gas deposits. It is a case of control of human brain and human singing, the control of identity of the people who live now in the so-called Ukraine.
I think many of my viewers are going to appreciate the comments that you've made just now about Ukraine, but all of the comments you've made uh, during our conversation. Uh, I need to move on now to uh, the one thing that I and many others in the West have pinned our hopes to, and that's BRICS. Uh, Primarily led by Vladimir Putin and President Xi, but Putin has been more outspoken, more out in front, uh, and hosting that enormous meeting in Kazakhstan last year. Uh, the BRICS represent the uh, unfolding of a multipolar world, is what they're saying, a new civilization model for the future. And many of us have seen this as the greatest threat to what the United States is trying to do right now. The United States has doubled down on their goal of becoming the sole hegemon, the sole dominator of the entire planet, to rape and steal its resources and its labor. It's been the history of colonialism forever. But do you think that BRICS stands a reasonable chance to oppose the hegemon, to oppose what the United States is trying to do, and in terms of creating a different ideological understanding of how we could work together as a global community, and what they've already been doing, which is a great threat to Trump, and he's already said it, uh, to move away from the dollar. They're already trading in their own currencies. Uh, do you see BRICS as an existential threat and the possibility of a new world order not governed by the United States hegemon?
Well, now BRICS is not an alliance, it is just an association of countries informal association. It's not like European Union or Mercosur, but it has some chances. But if we see now the reaction of BRICS countries on Maduro kidnapping, for example, was very slow, or we have not heard, for example, the case of India or Brazil or South Africa. But the Trump, what is he doing? He is consolidating his country, his so-called Anglo-Saxon world, uh, together with Great Britain, Canada, Australia, etc. So he's establishing a kind of neo-empire, so-called Anglo-Saxon imperialism. And some countries within BRICS either don't understand the depth of the importance of this global transformation, or they hope uh, to be built into this new reality. The way from this crisis, or the ways to oppose American hegemony, is, for example, to establish a golden standard. Because Russia, China, India, South Africa, they have largest gold, silver, platinum deposits, and they are able to assure the golden standard, and that will be a final countdown for US dollar. Better to say to the Federal Reserve, which is really controlling the American economy and American policy. Trump is just a showman. But the Council of Federal Reserve, that is a real deep state which is making wars, aggressions, and oppression of own population within the United States and worldwide. And that will be the most important hit against the US hegemony and against this plan of paleo globalists who want to establish a some kind of world empire.
I'm glad you mentioned Russia, uh, and China, uh, Brazil, and other countries have been stockpiling precious metals, gold, silver, platinum, rare earth minerals, uh, and that is the hope that a lot of these countries, that the new world order will be based on gold and not the Federal Reserve. I want to come back to this with you, Alexander, in a future show to talk about these economic trends that are happening right now. I'm not an economist, but I've been trying to follow what is happening in terms of money and the transfer of money, in terms of trade, in terms of commodities. And now I've been following especially what's happening with gold and silver on the international markets. They're going out of sight. And uh, I'm going to want to pursue this again with you in another show very soon as we can schedule it. But I want to end on this one last question. Now, I'd like to know your views on how ordinary Russian people are reacting to what's happening in the past week, not just in terms of Trump in Venezuela, the seizing of the Russian flagged tanker towards Iceland, the war in Ukraine. How are people, in your opinion, you are closer to it than anybody else in the United States, obviously, and probably closer to it than I am, although I have a lot of Russian friends here and in other parts of Russia. What do you think Russian people are feeling as a result of this?
Well, in just 1 year ago, when Trump became a president, some people in Moscow, because I can't judge about the people in Vladivostok or in Magadan or in Murmansk, but some people who are more or less dealing with political science or with economy, they had some hopes that a conservative leader with the traditional values, with a team consisting of so-called traditionalists, will be somehow closer to Russia compared with Europe, with absolutely demonic figures like Friedrich Merz or Emmanuel Macron, Keir Starmer, who are killing own countries by migration issues, by economic sphere, etc. But now, for many people in Russia, it's obvious that Trump is not a kind of solution of the crisis of Western world, but probably even a trigger for a deeper crisis, for deeper self-destruction, and his attempts to establish some kind of new hegemon. It is just a continuation of American way of ruling, of governing, because I can remember the essay of Roman Roland warning to America. It was written in 1924 or 1926. He described American national character as a very rude, very strong, but impossible to have some negotiation abilities, to accept interests of other partners. And it seems that Romain Rolland has written that about Donald Trump. So Trump is not a mistake of the system. Trump is a booster of the system. And I think that we will see many um huge events and shifts in the global policy in this year or probably in coming years. But it's not about a kind of spirit of encourage if we are talking back about Russian-American negotiations. I hope very much that these negotiations will be stopped. There is no sense to have some flirt with Kushner or Witkoff in Moscow. And Russia has own way as a country civilization, and for sure we are open for economic ties, for economic agreements, but in terms of geopolitical ways, we have an absolutely different vision of our future, and some kinds of negotiations and agreements in this field, they are only against Russia.
Alexander, I can't thank you enough. I'm so happy that we've met. I'm so happy that we've finally been able to get you on the show. I hope to have you on as a regular guest frequently. You're uh, you're a very invaluable Russian voice because of your specialty, because of your areas of research, and because of your work as a geopolitical analyst and researcher. Uh, there's two things that we're going to talk about and we're going to keep our eye on in the next couple of days, and that's Iran. I don't want to speculate. Everybody's thinking that it's either Greenland or Iran that's next, but we'll keep our eye on that. And if something does happen, I hope that we can get you back on the show very quickly. And then as we move forward, I want to continue conversations about the progress of BRICS, and especially in terms of what is happening globally in terms of uh, rare earth minerals and gold and silver. Alexander, thank you
Okay.
so much. We'll look forward to seeing you again
Sure.
very soon.
Have a nice day.
Thank you.